This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to convene the Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 North Haven Fire Commission meeting to order. I'd like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes of the Board of Fire Commission meeting from April 26th.
Second.
Hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Chief's report.
Good evening, all. I'll start with alarms like we normally do. Year to date, as of 2021, at this time, we're at 1,721 alarms. Year to date, as we sit here this evening, is at 1,999 alarms, so a difference of 278 alarms in the last year. Since our last Fire Commission meeting, which occurred on April 26th, these numbers are going to reflect 426 to 523. So since our last meeting, 18 intercepts to the hospital, 18 incident responses to the highway, and 93 incidents in which just an ambulance responded and no fire resources. 56% of our calls were EMS in nature, and approximately 387 incidents, 94 of which were occurring simultaneously, which accounts for 24% overlap. That covers the alarms. Regarding our budget, at this time last year, we were at 88.6. As we sit here tonight, we're at 87.1. That brings us through the conclusion of period 10. Again, since our last meeting, we've collected almost $95,000 in permit fees. So that brings us for this fiscal year to just over $325,000. Regarding EMS billing, we are currently at $66,564 through period 9. The Fire Marshal's Office, the Commission will be provided with a report from the Fire Marshal's Office, and that covered the month of April. As you can see on there, some other trouble spots surfacing and ongoing inspections and so forth. Again, please take note of the public inquiries and the reports, which we're tracking now as well for the various different types of reports we have to prepare, whether it be for insurance companies, property owners, land records, whatever it might be. That's something new that we're keeping track of because we're trying to create the data for it. Otherwise, more recent, we've had 3 different house fires in the last basically 2 weeks, all of which have required extensive fire investigations. So for the month of May, you're likely to see a bit of a decline in the inspections and so forth that are taking place because, quite honestly, the fire investigations right now are taking up a lot of our time. 3 building fires and another separate fire, which was an arson case. So those 4 incidents are occupying a lot of our time in terms of the Fire Marshal's Office right now. And that's going to happen from time to time. Otherwise, something to keep in mind is on May 28th, this coming Saturday, the 4th shift down here at Monteluise is going to be staffed. As we sit here tonight, this will be the last day that this station will not have a staffed ALS engine at any given time. So as of 0800 hours tomorrow, the next shift comes on. That shift will normally carry through till Saturday morning, but with the 4th shift coming on now on Saturday, that's going to be something that's going to stay with us for a long time to come, I hope. Otherwise, you may have noticed just under other, I have under my report, the driveway at fire headquarters is currently closed. We're installing a generator, and that's taken a little bit longer than usual because of some of the weather that we had. So we're just using an alternate entrance and exit off of 15 Broadway. So if you see cones up at the entrance to the fire headquarters, that's what's going on. And that's what I have for a chief's report.
Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
Can we go to the budget real quick? Any update on getting a copy of the budget when it goes to the,
I
Board
have,
of Finance?
I have not gotten any update on that. I made that request and that has fallen on deaf ears.
Okay.
I will try once again.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, it's available to the public, so it just makes more sense for them to give it to us
I
than for
agree.
me to have to write an FOI
I
request.
absolutely agree.
Okay. And do you know, I don't know whether you know this off the top of your head, but we're a little under where we were last year. I know there's some line items that have been brought up at the BOF. Do we know where the other line items that are obviously under budget, where they are in the budget?
Offhand, I don't know. I'd have to look and let you know. I mean, there's like any other line item budgeting, there's some that are gonna be over, there's some
Right.
gonna be under, and we'll have to take a better look at it as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. I mean, already we're starting to wrap up. There'll be less and less POs taken out. Again, as we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of POs that are sitting out there right now as kind of placeholders, and those will start getting closed out, likely for less of a value than the PO is taken for.
Okay.
Chief, in the summary, I noticed that there's 47 dispatch canceled en route calls. It seems like an awful large number. Any reasoning behind that?
Yeah, good reasons actually. So with the ambulance company in town now, again, this is all rather recent, so last calendar year. The what's happening is if the ambulance arrives on scene and feels that there's no longer a fire resource needed because of any number of factors. So let's say that the person's presenting in a manner that two EMS providers that arrive in the ambulance can effectively handle. There's not outside factors like family and so forth that are interacting with the scene. There's not egress factors where the person's not up on a second, third floor and a basement needs to be carried out. If the ambulance arrives and says, hey, with the two people we have here, we can handle this scene, they'll cancel the fire resource that's en route. And with ambulances in town as much as they are, there's times that they're beating us to calls, there's other times that they're not, but that's the reason that you're seeing that.
Got it.
That's something new that you probably didn't see 2-3 years ago because we were waiting 20 plus minutes for ambulances to arrive.
Which is a plus for our department. Obviously,
very
our personnel are on duty at that point and are able to respond to another call.
Yep.
Perfect.
But it just depends on the nature of what's going on.
Sure, sure.
I just want to know the response times for those 3 house fires.
I'd have to look and get back to you. Yeah, the one that I know, they're all actually on this side of town. I'm on the west side of town, but they were the one that's come to mind right now was the one on Middletown Avenue. I'm sorry, Cloudland Road, where the engine that was out of this station right on scene in 3 minutes. The other two I'd have to check and find out.
That's amazing. It just goes to substantiate the need of having paid personnel here in Mondelez in order to respond to the furthest part of our town.
The travel distance,
Yeah.
you can't make up for that. Right?
No, absolutely.
So
And,
it's
and
huge.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, every 1 minute a fire doubles in size, is that correct?
There's theories out there whether to put what you read, 30 seconds to a minute, it doubles in size depending on which resource you're quoting. Yeah.
And do we know how many people, how many firefighters ended up on scene, including volunteers?
Yep, I can get that for you.
Okay.
Yep. If that's something that you're going to want to start to know, let me know. I'll start coming with that. But we happen to have a pretty good rash of fires in a matter of a few weeks' time. But we can start looking at that more. But remember with that too, that number is not so much the total number that arrive; it's how many arrive in that given period of minutes.
Right, right.
Because if you arrive 25 minutes later, it's not as effective as if you're there right away.
Did we require mutual aid for any of those
Yes.
fires? All of them?
2 of the 3.
So we needed more than, obviously we only have 10 firefighters on shift.
Correct.
So we needed more manpower, if you will. Okay. Any other questions of the chief regarding his report?
Chief, I didn't understand what you said about this firehouse. It's not gonna close.
No.
No, there's got to be. This is the last calendar day that there will not be paid staff in this firehouse with a engine staff with a paramedic.
You good?
Yeah,
Okay. Correspondence.
I have the same correspondence you have if
Yeah.
you want to reference it, sure.
You wanna read
Okay,
it?
you go ahead, you can go.
Okay. We received a correspondence that went to the chief, Chairman Nuzzolo, and myself. I'll just read it. Items for discussion at the May 24th Fire Commission meeting. After watching the climate change forum produced by the town and broadcast on NHTV, I was reminded of the suggestion below submitted last November concerning acquiring a piece of electronic powered apparatus for the purpose of testing. Given the burgeoning problems that climate change is causing, I would like to know the status of this suggestion. If available to the department, testing an electric powered apparatus would not only be forward thinking for when the time comes that such an apparatus can be mandated, as well as data collected from its use being valuable in the development of electronic fire apparatus technology. I look forward to the ensuing discussion of this matter. Sincerely, Gary George.
Chief, have you had any dealings with any of our suppliers that have electronic or electric fire apparatus?
Sure. So while I was in Indianapolis the last couple of weeks at that convention that we go to pretty regularly, did have an opportunity to look at and analyze a few different vendors that are currently carrying electric fire apparatus. There's a few out there. Rosenbauer, Pierce, KME are a few that come to mind that are manufacturing electric fire engines at this point. It's something that I think it's for consideration in the future in terms of is it something that's going to fit for North Haven. But at this point in time, I don't see it being financially feasible for us to do. So, for example, Los Angeles just took delivery of a electric fire engine. They're the first department in the nation to do so, and it was at a cost of $1.2 million. We're currently paying about $750,000 for an engine, so it's quite a bit more cost for an electric engine than for the traditional diesel-powered engines that we have. In terms of can we partner with somebody, I don't see that being an option. Had a few discussions with some different vendors while we were there, and for the most part, they're working with departments where the manufacturer is right there in that city or in that town or right nearby, so that as things come up, they can be troubleshooted right away. We don't have an apparatus manufacturer anywhere near us. We have sales reps, but we don't have a manufacturer. We don't have a factory near us. So obviously, if something were to go wrong, they have to fly somebody out here and troubleshoot it and so forth. And that's just the reason why I think, for the most part, it's staying isolated to really close to where the engine's being manufactured. If there are departments out there that are piloting these types of apparatus, they're named departments. So they're the city of New York, they're the city of Los Angeles, they're the city of Miami. There are departments out there that are setting the standard for the rest of the country. North Haven's not going to set the standard for the rest of the country. We're not that big of a town.
And do we know, in that last infrastructure bill, there was specific, there was money put aside for school buses to be transitioned over to electric vehicles. Do we know, is there any possibility that there'll be stuff coming forward to look at fire apparatus?
So there may be something coming down from FEMA at some point in time, but remember that even with apparatus, they're the most sought after grants. 60% of all the grants that go into FEMA are for apparatus. Whether or not FEMA is going to begin to award when there's only so much money available to disperse in the first place, whether or not they're going to award a department with an electric apparatus and eat away at that total dollars available to all the other departments in the country, I don't know. It's to be seen. That's the only resource I know of right now that's going to work in terms of grants. Something to keep in mind when I looked at some of the engines that are out there is they can pump for a long time. There's not a lot of draw on battery life when you're pumping a fire. It's lights and it's an engine running. So that will pump for, most fire engines will pump for about 10 hours. That's a long time. It's the driving. So they factor for, which is probably why Los Angeles went with it, the fire engines that are electric are staying within about a 5-mile area, and they can do about 10 to 12 calls before they need to be plugged in for several hours. It may come as a surprise to people, but we're busier than that. So we can't afford to not respond to a call because the engine has to charge for a while. So I do think the technology needs to improve quite a bit as well. And even if it does, it's the way that we use apparatus here and responding to the entire town versus responding to districts, city blocks, a few city blocks here and there. It might not be something that's going to work anytime soon, but it's something that's on our radar. We're watching it.
It'll be interesting to learn how Los Angeles, New York, Florida, Miami, whoever it is, how the apparatus handles and what the upkeep is over, let's say, the next year or two. Breakdowns or whatever. We had challenges with new apparatus ourselves, and I can only imagine with a brand new apparatus rolling off the assembly line that's all electric. I would imagine it's going to take them a few years before they can really define all of the efficiencies that need to come out of that. But I absolutely something that I think we're all going to have to look at, whether it's our personal cars or whatever it might be. So I think it's a good suggestion for departments to look at. How realistic is it for us in North Haven? To be determined, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
One quick follow-up that around correspondence, we had talked a while back about a single email that would go to all the commissioners. Is that up and running, and who does that go to? Because I when you go on the website, you can't really find that common email address. So, like, you and I got the email to our personal emails. And the problem with that is, if you ever get an FOI request on anything, your and my emails are then going to be subject to the FOI request. So that's one of the reasons when I was on the Board of Ed, we all had a school district email, and I believe the Board of Finance those members, I think, I was told by a Board of Finance member, they each have their own North Haven email address for that exact reason. So it's not I think if we could follow up on that, I mean, I'd be happy to call whoever sets those up just to figure out how to make that happen and make sure it either would be forwarded to us or we'd all get, we'd all have access to get into it, or I'm not quite sure.
I was under the impression that we have a fire commission email address.
We do. It goes to me for that same reason for FOI, and
Yeah.
then I forward it off to the commissioners.
Okay.
So how would a person in the public be able to find that? Because that was the question that was raised.
I'm sure it's on the website. I
I'm
don't
not
know where
sure
it's.
either.
Definitely not on the website.
We'll have to, find out how that'll work.
Okay.
Who would we speak to on that, Chief? Or would you be able to speak to someone?
We gotta look at how other departments are doing it first and,
Okay.
and see just what other departments are doing.
I can email Val and just ask, because
Yeah.
is she the one who handles the website?
I don't think so, is she?
The town, oh, should in the town website or the department website?
Well, they should be connected.
Yeah, we'd rather not do that. Because then anytime we have to update our website, we have to go through the town to do so. Whereas right now, just like
Well, so there is.
they
so-
link to us, but
So what happened was, so that this may be part of the confusion, because when people go onto the town website, there's a whole section on boards and commissions. And
right.
that's where people, I think, are going looking for boards and commission information.
Correct.
So it should be listed there for sure, the email address, because more people are gonna go to that than
That makes
necessarily
sense. Yeah.
look at the fire department page to get the email. So
Sure.
do you want me to email Val and just ask her to get it uploaded to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't see where that would be an issue, yeah. Any other correspondence or questions regarding the electric apparatus? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business of the fire department.
I don't have any old business.
Chief, the training center, where are we with the completion of that?
A couple of minor things we're waiting on for supply chain issues regarding the articulating roof in the front, but nothing that's holding us up. We have a temp CO. We're actively using it. It's all the members of the department are engaged in training quite often there.
And the water line, is that in?
It is not in. It's still scheduled, but there's nothing. There's not a hard date for that yet.
Okay.
In the meantime, we're doing without it, and part of that is because we don't need to necessarily flow that much water at any given time there. The hydrants are really more for a pumping standpoint. So, to talk in layman's terms, to connect to the hydrant, to roll up, to make those connections, for the driver to work those different levers and pumps to make that work. So right now we can do that elsewhere, like we have all along. It's just a matter of it'll be nice when it's up there.
So what are some of the training activities that are occurring in the training center?
Sure. So I mean, anything but burning. And to be honest with you, that's not a bad thing, because burning brings with it quite a bit of liability and brings with it special plans that have to be written for what we call a burn plan to be NFPA compliant and OSHA compliant. So we can go elsewhere and do that. So essentially right now, ladders, we've never had a place before to put ladders up and to train ladders. And when I'm talking ground ladders, I'm talking 6 different size ladders, all that have to be carried and thrown and used differently. And then for ladders as well, when you ladder a building, you're not always laddering the same part of the building. You're either laddering for vent, you're laddering for search, you're laddering for any number of things. And so that all changes. How we put the ladders up change. You can do, we have a smoke machine there where we can build smoke up in in all the floors to the point where you can't see anything in front of you. It's non-toxic smoke, so it's not hazardous to anybody who's inside there. We can put an irritant in there, but we typically don't do that yet. So we can do a number of different search evolutions. The stair configurations in there are all different, so that we're getting the staff acclimated to different stairs they'll encounter in the real world. Whether it's standpipes, whether it's rescue, so there's different props inside there for various types of rescue. We're doing forcible entry training in there. There's a number of things. We can do everything but burn, and that's perfectly okay.
And Chief, our firefighters are able to train propelling out of the windows?
Yeah, they will be.
As well?
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the fire training center?
Not fire
No?
training center.
Anything else, Jeff?
I was just gonna ask, can you get an apparatus update? Just
Sure. So engine 9 was the apparatus that was struck on the highway. That was the one that we were hoping to have placed back in service while we were waiting on parts, so that we're not subject to the parts issue everybody's having right now. That didn't happen. In the end, they're not able to put that apparatus back in service. I'm pretty sure I reported that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The latest as of last month was 4 months out. The latest as of last week looks like it might be about 60 days out now. So the timeline's moving up on us, which is good. That has presented some operational deficiencies for us, because the spare engine that we have is barely operable anymore. It's the one that you and I went out several months ago. So that is the absolute last resort that we want to use. In fact, most of the staff in the department outright refuse to use it unless there's nothing else left. It's just not something they're comfortable with. So that places a deficiency on us in terms of the apparatus that is available to us. The new rescue was ordered, and it is being placed into service, it looks like, within probably the next week to 2 weeks. We have to wait on a couple other items for it in the state inspection, and that'll bring us back up to the 2 rescues. Other than that, the preventive maintenance is done on all the apparatus specific to the engines themselves, the mechanical engines, and the pump testing is something we'll have to schedule later on in the year. We don't have the means to be able to take apparatus out of service for an extended period of time right now, because we don't have any depth. We have no spares. So if we did that, we'd be shutting stations down.
And the spare engine that we're using for engine 9, where is that? Is it here?
Yes, here, yeah.
And
So we will shuffle apparatus around in the town to meet the demands of that station.
And that engine that's here, and as the chief alluded to, he and I took a ride sometime this winter.
Yeah, it's not here right now. It's in a different station.
It was absolutely frightening. As a passenger sitting in the seat, the chief was driving. I mean, I was just appalled, and I'm fearful for our firefighters that need to ride in that apparatus and use it. We should have retired that apparatus years ago, and unfortunately are not able to do so until our new 2 apparatus come in. And I'm not sure if that's one of the engines that will be retired.
Most definitely, no.
But it was a frightening experience, I have to say the truth. Any other questions, Jen?
One last just follow up with that. So the new engines that have been, or apparatus that have been ordered, we're still.
Still about a year out.
A year out. And
The latest I heard was they're going to go to the assembly line in January, and once they hit the assembly line, you're looking at about 4 months.
okay. And then just in general, in terms of the most critical equipment needs, where would you say?
It's apparatus, but there's a plan for apparatus right now, which is why you don't really hear me making a lot of noise about it and even bringing it up in this form necessarily, because we're on a path right now to fix it. It's just we're fortunate we placed the order when we did, or we'd be even that much further out. So we really need those 2 apparatus to get here. I'm confident that when we receive those 2 engines, we'll be in a much better place than we are right now.
So, Chief, as far as PPE is concerned, bottles, gear, whatever it might be, hoses. I know we have line items in our budget for the replacement of outdated equipment. Are we okay right now as far as all of our staff is concerned and the new firefighters who are coming on board this year?
Yeah, as we sit here today, we're good. So the equipment line was increased to be able to buy a little bit of hose and appliances and some gear from a year-to-year basis. Right now, we're doing okay. We're watching the gear a little bit, only because the gear, like everything else, has gone up in price quite a bit. So where we might have been able to buy, let's say, 8 sets in the past, we may be down to only 7 sets now. But it's something we've got to keep monitoring. But right now, there's no critical needs. I mean, the biggest problem we have right now is that, from a gear standpoint, if the commissioners are hearing anything, is there was once a time here when we would take in a new volunteer and we would have gear available for them because we had enough of it available from the constant coming and going where we had something that would fit. We don't really have that right now. When we bring in a new volunteer, there's times that we might have something that'll fit, but most of the time we don't. And so what we do is we end up renting gear for the first year, which is fine. It's actually very economical to do so because the cost isn't that exorbitant at all. And what it allows you to do is vet that individual out for the first year, see if it's something that's even going to work for them before you invest $3,500 in a set of structural firefighting gear, and they may not work out 6 months later. So we're finding ways around it, but there's no critical needs at this point, no.
I'm happy to hear that about the volunteers.
Yeah.
I know that was a concern that the volunteers had previously, and I like the idea about renting the equipment for them. So it's going to be equipment that fits them appropriately because we have some small volunteers and some larger volunteers.
The only thing you're hearing right now about PPE is there's a big push right now for a second set of PPE. In fact, there was some legislation that was recently passed regarding the presumptive cancer bill and some of the things. If you were to look up for the Lavender Report, you can look up the Lavender Report and it gives you various things you should be doing to keep your firefighters safe from cancer. We've adopted the Lavender Report in our practice. So while some members may not have a second set of gear, if you read the fine print of the Lavender Report, it says a second set of gear or access to a PPE washer and dryer. And so we have 2 sets of washer and dryers in the department, 2 different stations. And so if members don't have a second set, and you do hear some members saying, geez, I really wish I could. We're building up to that. Buying 7 to 8 sets a year right now, we'll eventually get to the point where we can do that.
It was an excellent investment for us to have the washers and dryers, and I know our concern about the potential of cancer for our firefighters from all of the smoke and whatever that comes out of those fires was critically important. So again, I'm happy to hear that they have the appropriate equipment for them, and it's all within code and in good repair.
And one last follow-up, the administrative apparatus, the vehicles that you were looking for, those came through on the budget, correct?
Yes, correct. The budget was passed, and
That was
thank
in
you
there.
to the public who voted in favor of the referendum. So that allowed us to be able to have in the budget to hire 2 additional firefighters, as well as the admin vehicle is in this budget. So once the fiscal year is in play, I'm sure that order will be placed. And it's sorely needed. Our chiefs are using these apparatus and a lot of miles on them, a lot of idling time, and it's important for us to have another admin vehicle. Absolutely. Anything else of the chief regarding old business? New business for the fire department? Chief, anything you can think of? Any questions regarding new business? Good of the fire department.
Good of the department, I had on here some items about the apparatus, but we've already discussed that. So nothing further. We'll be participating in the Memorial Day Parade this coming weekend, and also participating in the ceremony beforehand. But that's all I have.
One quick question about under this category, in terms of wellness and mental health for the firefighters, especially if there's something that's gone on that can impact them, COVID, fire, things like that. What does the department sort of offer? What's out there?
Sure. So it's a good question. So the town contracts with EAP, which is a pretty popular provider, and there's also a resource set up amongst several area fire departments in which there's peer support groups available, and there's personal phone numbers of several members from the area departments that are posted and available to anybody who's coming across trouble. It's a real issue. In fact, one of the scenes that they responded to just within the last few days, I know that there's some emergency service personnel that needed to talk to somebody. So it's something that's it's real and it's happening.
And they all know how to get what they need. Okay, good.
One other thing, I'd like to thank our chaplain, Chaplain Jim Detwiler, who's celebrating his anniversary this month. I want to say it's 14 years as our chaplain in the fire department. He has certainly made his mark in life here. He's touched the lives of many of our firefighters and family members and persons who needed spiritual assistance. So on behalf of this commission, I'd like to thank Chaplain Jim Detwiler for his years of service. He's expanded his chaplaincy on a regional basis, and he's quite proud of it, and we're proud of him. So again, on behalf of the commission, I'd like to thank him and congratulate him on his anniversary. Anything else for the good of the department? Here are none, we'll open it up to public comments. Yes, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Sally Blaney, 5 Blossom Drive. I was here at the Fire Commission meeting at your March meeting, and I had asked some questions about some statistical information that was on the fire department Facebook page about the total calls received in calendar year 2021. Facebook page said that there were 4,896 calls, and then it listed a breakdown: 23 building fires, 15 vehicle fires, 99 fires within a building, 43 other fires like brush, rail, and dumpster, 346 motor vehicle, 95 hazardous conditions like CO and wires down, 304 alarms, and 2,593 medical calls, for a total of 3,086 518. And so the difference between that total and the total calls, 4,896, was 1,378. And at the March meeting, I had asked what constituted those missing or unaccounted for calls. 1,378 was 28% of the total. And at the time, the chief did not have that information available, which was fine, and I said I would come back at your April meeting, but I was regretfully unable to attend in April due to sickness, and so I'm here tonight to ask if that information for the missing, or I shouldn't say missing, they're not missing, the unaccounted for on the Facebook page total of 1378, do you have a breakdown of that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it because I addressed this last month. I know that you weren't here,
I was not here.
but I did address it. So I'm just trying to go back to what I had prepared at that time. It is there, and you're correct. The numbers you all referenced are correct. The only thing is you totaled the numbers of the alarms given, and I did not total the number of the alarms given. So the total I provided was 4896. It was not intended to be an all-inclusive list of call types. It was intended only to be a sampling of call types. But what I can tell you is...
So 4,896 is not the number?
No,
of
but
calls?
what I'm saying is it was never intended to be able to add up the sampling of call types to equal 4896. It was just, those seem to be the call types that people are most interested in.
Okay.
It wasn't intended to be an all-inclusive list of the call
Right,
types
I
received.
figured that out when I saw that
Right.
1,300 were missing. I wanted to know the nature of those.
Yep.
If it was like 20 or 30 missing, I would never have asked.
Sure.
But 1,378
Mm-hmm.
or 28% of the total seemed significant enough to inquire about.
Sure. So what I can tell you is there were, so what's not included in that sampling of calls are service calls, which equaled 181. And again, you're not going to be, there's line by line here, so I'll need to look through this. But essentially service calls are 181 service calls. These include things like unauthorized burning, issues where we're covering other towns, smoke investigations, people who are locked in elevators, people who are locked out of their homes, things like that. Good intent calls, which is about 671 good intent calls. So these are calls where, let's say there was a house fire called in, we arrived on scene to find out that it was a laundry event going. It was somebody burning in the area and it was smoke from something else.
How many was with that?
671, what we
That's
call good
significant.
intent calls.
Okay.
False alarms and false calls, which account for sprinkler activations with no fire, carbon monoxide activations, heat detector activations, bomb scares. I mean, these are not how I say this. These are not categories I make up. These are categories that are specific to INFRS, which is the National Fire Incident Reporting System. There are 304 there, and then there's some other things like weather incidents, lightning strikes, citizen complaints, things like that. I can assure you that they total 4,896 incidents.
Okay. So those false alarms at 304 are different from the alarms that was on the list, also 304. That's just coincident that it's the same amount.
Yeah, again, I'd have to look, Sally.
You have to-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the chairman referenced, a higher than usual canceled en route calls, because as you explained, a lot of times the ambulance arrives and they say they can handle it, and so there's cancellations en route, or is there a number for that? For 2021 calls that were canceled en route?
560.
I see. Okay. All right, and thank you very much. And again, I regretfully could not attend last month. I was ill.
Sure.
No problem, I'm glad you're feeling better.
I am. I was just had the flu, the regular flu. I just wanted to clarify something that you said, Mr. Chairman, about the administrative vehicle,
Yeah.
which is a purchase I've long advocated for, and I'm glad we're finally getting it for this department. It is not in the budget. It was taken out with 11 other capital items. So I didn't want to give the false impression. It's not in the budget. It is being covered extraneously by ARPA, American Rescue Act federal funding, which I think is an appropriate use for this administrative vehicle. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I appreciate that, but
Yes.
I'm sure the referendum gave it, the administrative vehicle was, I believe, in that budget. Was it not, Chief?
It was-
Originally it was
It was.
cut,
And then it was cut out?
like most capital was.
Okay, and then
Yes.
the capital was purchased using different funds,
Yeah,
right?
1.1
Not the resident funds.
1.1 million
Yeah.
capital items were taken out of the budget.
Right.
That was voted on last week. And of that 1.1 million, 40,000 was for this
Correct.
needed fire department administrative or utility vehicle, whatever you want to categorize it as. So that is being, you're getting that, but it's covered by ARPA.
Got it.
It's not covered by
The
the
taxpayers.
taxpayers in this budget.
Understand.
And I thought it was an appropriate use of federal funding.
I agree.
So, as well as the new medical rescue is also being covered by ARPA,
Correct.
which is also badly needed because I believe it's the newer of the two medical rescues that you're having the most trouble.
Right.
That it is.
It's amazing.
It is, and the only thing that's worth noting as well that it does not look like it's going to happen is there was reference of ARPA going towards a $300,000 lease for the engines. That does not look like it's going to happen because of the fact we're not taking delivery of the engines. The first year's payment that we have put aside from last year is going to go towards the first year that we actually have the apparatus. Because there's a huge lag time of delivery, we don't have a second payment due yet until we actually take delivery of the engine. So
That's good.
near as I can tell right now, that does not look like it's going to be required.
Oh, well, that's good because I didn't think that, I know we have to pay that 300,000 once it's due for 5 years, I believe, for the two new engines. And I didn't think that was a good use of ARPA money. I don't think you should use short-term funding for long-term expenditure requirements. So I'm glad to hear that. I know that last year we just paid the 60,000 to place the order.
Correct.
Is my memory correct on that, Chief? Yeah.
Yep.
One other point, since you brought up apparatus, but I'm glad you're getting your new administrative vehicle and your rescue vehicle because the repair costs were just too much for that.
The downtime too.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's good, and, but speaking of apparatus, now the engine that the career firefighters use at, Rosadini headquarters, how old is that engine?
That engine is probably 2 to 3 years old. That's the newest of
That's
what
the
we
new,
have.
that's the one that was approved a few years back at
Correct.
the town meeting. And, the engine that is manned here at Mount Louise by the career firefighters that has paramedic abilities, how old is that one?
I believe that one is around 16.
16? Okay. And, the ladder truck, again, at Rosadini headquarters, manned by the career firefighters, that's about 4 or 5 years
4
old?
to 5.
Yeah, somewhere, okay. So I just wanted to check on the ages of the engines that are being utilized by the career firefighter. So thank you.
There's no
Thank you for
que-
your time.
You're welcome. There's no question that our apparatus, condition of our apparatus and the age of our apparatus, because of the systematic purchasing of apparatus, has improved. And it will improve even more so in a year once we take delivery of the two apparatus that are on order. So we're really happy about that, and I'm sure our firefighters are as well. And I think the rescue, certainly the downtime for that rescue, is a major issue for the residents of our town. Having only one rescue and not being able to, have another backup rescue when that one's in for mechanical needs is a big issue for us.
We end up having to use an engine.
Yeah, and that's when folks see our ladder truck or our engine out and say,
Yeah.
why is a ladder truck going out on medical call? It's because we don't have another apparatus or our rescue.
Right, well,
sometimes,
I'm very glad that we have the ARPA money to cover that.
I as well.
Thankfully, the,
Yep.
ARPA Act was, passed, in March of 2021.
Worked out well for our town, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
the engine that was purchased, it was authorized at a town meeting in, July of either 14 or 15. The price was about $460, and that was, a new engine, but where is that one? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I believe that one is a Smeel, and it's
Smeel,
it's
yeah.
at West Ridge Station. It's has engine 6 on it. Whether or not it's always acting the capacity of engine 6
Yeah.
depends on what's going on, but it has number 6 on it.
I know it had some problems in the beginning, but I thought they were resolved.
It did, in the way that we resolved that was, again, that same conference I referenced going to Indianapolis, because all of the vendors and manufacturers from all over the country are there. I went around and grabbed every one of them at the same time and got us all in the same room together and let them know what was going on with our engine, and that's how we were able to reach a resolution. So it pays off to be at those conferences to get the players from these companies involved to be able to resolve it. So there was some significant engine work done at that time on that engine, and we haven't had any problems with it since.
Right, but it's newer than the 16-year-old engine being used by the career firefighters here at Mount Louise, but
It is.
it's not, it's a volunteer engine.
Yeah, and part of that was, again, considering the amount of issues we had with it, we weren't about to keep running it out constantly. Like, this engine down here runs out a lot. So part of this is trying to spread the workload of the apparatus in our fleet, so that we don't look for problems.
So are you a Pierce man rather than a Steel man?
No, I'm not. I am.
What is your,
and I'll be honest with you.
which one is the Chevrolet and which one's the Cadillac?
Yeah, so I will tell you that I prefer Sutphen, which is what we have.
some of those.
And I'll give you the reason why, and you'll probably appreciate this. So we have one engine now that's a Sutphen, the tower ladder is a Sutphen, and 2 are older now are Sutphens. And I'll start by giving the staff credit. So the firefighters are the ones that were given a budget, given some parameters that I gave them a few years ago, and because they're the ones using it all day, I value their opinion very much. So they volunteered their time and spoke with various vendors and manufacturers and so forth, and they put in dozens and dozens of hours into planning this and going to Ohio and going to Wisconsin and so forth. The reason that turned me on to Sutphen was after a fire that we had at a chemical facility in which there was a lot of equipment that was damaged.
The Defco part?
I wasn't going to say it, but yes.
Okay, well,
yeah.
I can say it.
You can. There was equipment being transferred to and from the roof in that tower ladder, so in that bucket with equipment and personnel and everything else all inside. And one by one, the equipment and the gear and the air packs and everything else that we used during that incident, because of the chemicals that were involved, all had to be replaced. One by one, the warranties and the vendors were coming back and saying, we can't warranty the product, it has to be from service, which is why that claim was as high as it was. Those tools and all of that equipment was put down in that bucket truck to be able to bring back and forth as we were trying to cut that roof open and keep that fire from spreading. Mr. Sutphen himself, the owner of Sutphen, when asked what we need to do with that ladder truck, I fully expected to have to be told that we had to replace the entire bucket. That's what some manufacturers would have said. He did not give us that advice. He told us to basically power wash it and it will be fine. There are other manufacturers out there who would have capitalized on that opportunity and made money, and we would have been out of a ladder truck for months and at a significant cost. So that's why I value Sutphen the way that I do, because there's not very many manufacturers out there who are honest like that anymore.
Interesting, that Sutphen ladder truck, again, it's 4 or 5 years old, is a very impressive piece of equipment. One of your captains was kind enough about a year ago to give me a very detailed explanation of the workings of the side panel, and it was very impressive. So since you've confessed your preference, what are the two new engines that are on order?
They're both sub.
They are, that's good.
For the longest time, we had Pierce in this town. In fact,
Yeah,
every
and we have a
every
lot of
apparatus in
Pierce.
this town was Pierce,
Mhm.
and I think we're moving away from that now. So,
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. You're welcome. Any other public comments? Here or none, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session. I'd like to call the Tuesday, May 24, 2022 North Haven Fire Commission meeting back in session. Any further questions, Jen?
I just wanted to find out, at the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen, there was, questions about they're gonna do fire ops in September. And I think the person who was asking said he was gonna be here, so he's not here. Do you know anything about?
I don't. They've discussed with me the fact that their intention is to offer the fire ops program, and I was under the same assumption that whether it's not this month, next month, they're going to be making their way to various commissions and boards in town to
They were
extend their
passing
invitations.
out letters to invite them, so sometime in
Yeah.
September.
Yep. So I would think over the next meeting or two,
Okay.
they'll finish making their rounds.
Okay.
Any further business coming before our commission? I hear none. I'd like to announce that our next regularly scheduled fire commission meeting will be Tuesday, June 28th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Here at the Monowese Company 2 Community Center, 282 Quinnipiac Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.